Zodiac Killer, America's most infamous unidentified serial killer.
The man pulled out a knife and just plunged it into Brian's back without any warning whatsoever.
For over half a century, one name has haunted the American consciousness like few others: the Zodiac Killer.
He's an absolutely merciless.
By rope, by gun, by knife.
A phantom who terrorized Northern California in the late 1960s, taunted police with cryptic letters, and vanished without a trace.
Why has he not been caught?
Extremely intelligent. This man has crafted ciphers that have never been broken to this day, and he's highly skilled. He's skilled in explosives, cryptography, any type of weapons. Even
a master criminal?
A master criminal, and uncaught to this day.
Despite one of the most intensive manhunts in criminal history, the Zodiac's true identity remains shrouded in mystery, becoming America's most infamous unsolved case.
During the confusion and the fear of that moment, it's possible that they may have said something like, "The man's wearing a black jacket." Somehow the dispatcher misheard this and then repeated they were looking for a black man instead of a white man.
Countless theories, suspects, and false leads emerged over decades.
There are a lot of people around who with all this bad publicity, are probably sure that I'm a Zodiac.
But definitive proof remained frustratingly elusive until now.
I've cracked the Zodiac 340 cipher.
This is the biggest breakthrough in cryptology in the last 50 years.
In what investigators are calling a watershed moment in forensic science, 2025 has delivered what generations of detectives could not: the unmasking of the Zodiac Killer.
He's an absolutely ruthless, completely merciless.
By rope, by gun, by knife.
He doesn't get great excitement over it. He thinks killing is just killing.
To understand the magnitude of this breakthrough, we must first revisit the night that unfolded across Northern California communities between December 1968 and October 1969. Though some investigators believe the Zodiac's activities may have extended years beyond this confirmed timeline. The terror began on December 20th, 1968, when teenagers David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were gunned down on their first date along Lake Herman Road in Benicia.
Probably they were ordered out of the car by the responsible, and the boy was shot right at the side of the car, and the girl apparently tried to run, and she was shot and found 28 feet further on.
The young couple had parked in a notorious lover's lane when an assailant approached their vehicle and opened fire with a .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol. Jensen was shot 5 times in the back as she attempted to flee, while Faraday died from a single shot to the head. With no witnesses and minimal evidence, police initially treated it as an isolated incident.
How did this incident occur, apparently?
Well, they were shot.
Do you have any idea what the possible motive might be for this killing?
We have no motive at this time.
6 months later, on July 4th, 1969, the killer struck again at Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo, just a few miles from the first attack. Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau were sitting in Ferrin's car when a man approached with a flashlight and fired multiple rounds from a 9mm semi-automatic pistol. Ferrin died immediately, but Mageau survived despite being shot 4 times. Critically, Mageau would later provide the only surviving eyewitness description of the Zodiac: a stocky white male, approximately 5'8" to 5'10", with light brown curly hair. What transformed these attacks from random violence to something far more chilling occurred within an hour of the Blue Rock Springs attack. The killer placed a call to the Vallejo Police Department, calmly taking credit for both shootings and providing details only the perpetrator could know. This marked the beginning of the Zodiac's psychological game with authorities, a signature that would define the case.
The guy told us to take the money. He said, "I don't want it." Says, all I want to do is kill you people. I have to kill you." And then he stabbed the girl.
On September 27th, 1969, the violence escalated at Lake Berryessa in Napa County. College students Cecilia Shepard and Brian Hartnell were enjoying a picnic when they were approached by a man wearing the now iconic costume, a black executioner-style hood with the Zodiac's crosshair symbol emblazoned on the chest. Armed with a knife, he bound the couple and repeatedly stabbed them. Hartnell survived with 8 stab wounds, but Shepard died 2 days later from her injuries. Before leaving the scene, the killer wrote the dates of his previous attacks on the couple's car door, along with the Zodiac symbol. Just 2 weeks later, on October 11th, the Zodiac claimed his most brazen victim in the heart of San Francisco. Taxi driver Paul Stein was shot once in the head at point-blank range in the upscale Presidio Heights neighborhood. In a critical mistake, police dispatchers incorrectly described the suspect as black, causing officers to ignore a white man who matched the actual description walking just blocks from the scene, potentially the closest authorities ever came to apprehending the killer.
During the confusion and the fear of that moment, it's possible that they may have said something like, "The man's wearing a black jacket." Somehow the dispatcher misheard this and then repeated they were looking for a black man instead of a white man.
Communication with the public. What truly differentiated the Zodiac from other serial killers was his unprecedented campaign of public communication. Far from seeking anonymity, the Zodiac craved attention and recognition, using the press as his personal stage in a macabre performance that captivated and terrified the nation. The Zodiac's correspondence began in August 1969 when 3 nearly identical letters arrived at the offices of the San Francisco Chronicle, San Francisco Examiner, and Vallejo Times-Herald. Each contained details about the Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs attacks that hadn't been publicly released, establishing their authenticity. Each letter also included 1/3 of a cryptogram that the killer demanded be printed on the front page of each newspaper, threatening a killing spree if his demands weren't met. "I like killing people because it is so much fun," the Zodiac wrote, signing his name with the crosshair symbol that would become his trademark. This first cipher was broken within a week by a high school teacher and his wife, revealing a rambling message about collecting slaves for the afterlife but offering no clues to the killer's identity.
Now a group of sleuths claims to have solved the case of the infamous Zodiac killer.
The success of this media manipulation strategy emboldened the Zodiac, launching a correspondence that would continue for years. The letters followed a distinctive pattern. They were usually handwritten in a distinctive style with similar phraseology, often included previously unreleased crime details, and were frequently accompanied by threats of new attacks. Many contained ciphers of varying complexity, some of which remained unsolved for decades. The Zodiac also sent blood-stained fabric from Stein's shirt and other crime scene tokens to prove his authenticity. In his communications, the Zodiac demonstrated an unusual blend of intelligence and erratic behavior. His writing revealed someone with average to above-average education, but with significant spelling inconsistencies, which some investigators believed were intentional misdirections. He referenced cultural touchpoints from Gilbert and Sullivan's The Mikado to contemporary films, suggesting a person engaged with popular culture. Perhaps most disturbing was the Zodiac's evolving threats. He described plans to shoot school buses, the little kiddies make nice targets, bomb police officers, and create increasingly elaborate murder schemes. His letters continued sporadically until 1974, with the final authenticated communication sent to the Chronicle in January of that year. The media's response to the Zodiac became its own controversial chapter in the case.
Since the identity of the Zodiac killer remains unknown, we'll take a look at this killer's behavior and motives to give us a clue on who he really was.
Newspapers faced an ethical dilemma. Publishing the letters could encourage further violence, but withholding them might trigger the very killing sprees the Zodiac threatened. Ultimately, editors chose to publish, reasoning that public awareness might lead to the killer's capture. This decision transformed the Zodiac into a cultural phenomenon, inspiring countless books, films, and an enduring public fascination that persists more than 5 decades later. Decades of dead ends. As the Zodiac's letters gradually stopped, the investigation entered a frustrating period marked by promising leads that ultimately led nowhere. The half-century search became defined by a revolving door of suspects, each seeming to match crucial elements of the profile, yet each ultimately falling short of definitive proof. Arthur Lee Allen became the most enduring suspect throughout the investigation. A Vallejo resident with military training, Allen first came to police attention.
A Los Angeles area woman has come forward saying she can solve the case.
In 1971, when his friend Donald Cheney reported disturbing conversations in which Allen allegedly discussed hunting humans and using the name Zodiac. The circumstantial evidence against Allen was compelling. He owned a Zodiac brand watch with the crosshair symbol, possessed the same type of boots that left prints at Lake Berryessa, and lived near the first two crime scenes. Multiple search warrants were executed at Allen's residence, revealing bloody knives, firearms, and writing materials. Allen's involvement seemed even more likely when survivor Michael Mageau identified him from a photo lineup in 1991, stating he was definitely the man who shot me. Despite these connections, physical evidence remained elusive. Handwriting analyses were inconclusive, and when DNA testing became available in the early 2000s, samples from the Zodiac's letters didn't match Allen's profile. Allen died of a heart attack in 1992 before he could be conclusively ruled out. Lawrence Kane emerged as another compelling suspect through victim connections. Kane lived near the Presidio Heights neighborhood where Paul Stein was murdered and resembled police sketches.
Telling me he was sick, that he had killed many, many people.
Most intriguingly, Darlene Ferrin's sister claimed Kane had stalked Ferrin before her murder. Kane had suffered frontal lobe damage in a 1962 accident, which some investigators linked to the Zodiac's erratic, impulsive behavior. However, handwriting comparisons proved inconclusive, and no physical evidence ever connected Kane directly to the crimes. Richard Gaikowski, a counterculture newspaper editor in the Bay Area during the Zodiac era, entered the suspect pool when investigators noted similarities between his writing style and the Zodiac's letters. A former colleague claimed Gaikowski had an obsessive interest in the case, while a police dispatcher believed she recognized his voice as the Zodiac's from the Blue Rock Springs call. Despite these connections, nothing concrete materialized to elevate Gaikowski from suspect to confirmed killer. The investigation splintered in countless directions over the decades. Ross Sullivan, a library assistant near Riverside City College, became a suspect in the possible Zodiac-connected murder of Cherry Joe Bates. Rick Marshall, a film projectionist with an interest in cryptography, caught investigators' attention for his resemblance to police sketches. Theodore Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was briefly considered due to similarities in writing style, though timeline inconsistencies quickly ruled him out. Each investigation followed a similar pattern: initial excitement over seemingly strong connections, followed by disappointment as evidence failed to conclusively link the suspect to the crimes.
Now, detectives plan to enter the DNA results from the Zodiac letters into the same database that helped track down the alleged Golden State Killer.
Physical evidence collected in the pre-DNA era degraded over time, witnesses passed away, and crucial details faded from memory. By the early 2000s, many of the original investigators had retired or died, taking institutional knowledge with them. The case also attracted amateur sleuths, some contributing valuable insights while others muddied the waters with improbable theories. The Zodiac investigation became notorious for false confessions and mistaken identifications, with dozens of individuals coming forward to claim responsibility or accuse family members. Each required resource-intensive validation, further straining the investigation. The breakthrough DNA technology. The turning point in the Zodiac case emerged from a technological revolution that would have seemed like science fiction to the original investigators. The path to identifying the Zodiac killer was paved by a series of breakthrough advances in DNA science, innovations that collectively transformed the seemingly impossible into reality. Traditional DNA analysis, first used in criminal investigations in the 1980s, required substantial amounts of well-preserved genetic material and direct comparison.
A judge ruled today that prosecutors may collect DNA, fingerprints, and body photographs of the suspected Golden State Killer
to a known suspect's DNA. The Zodiac case presented multiple challenges for this approach. The collected samples, primarily saliva from envelope seals and stamps, were minimal, degraded by time, and contaminated by handling across decades. Furthermore, without a specific suspect for comparison, even a complete DNA profile would provide limited investigative value. The first major breakthrough came through the development of next-generation sequencing, NGS, in the early 2010s. Unlike older techniques that examined only specific markers, NGS could analyze entire genomes, extracting usable genetic information from samples hundreds of times smaller than previously required. This technology made it possible to finally obtain a workable DNA profile from the Zodiac's correspondence, focusing on fragments of letters sent in 1969 that had been handled minimally and stored in controlled conditions.
It was an unconventional approach that landed Joseph D'Angelo.
But the true game changer emerged in 2018 with the arrest of the Golden State Killer Joseph James D'Angelo through investigative genetic genealogy. This technique combined DNA analysis with traditional genealogical research, using commercial ancestry databases to identify distant relatives of unknown suspects. By building family trees from these matches and narrowing candidates through traditional investigative methods, authorities could identify suspects without requiring a direct DNA comparison. The Golden State Killer case provided both a methodological blueprint and legal precedent for the Zodiac investigation. In 2022, a specialized cold case unit obtained approval to apply these techniques,
conclusive enough to link the murderer of Celia Shepard to other murders in the Vallejo area in the past,
to the newly extracted Zodiac DNA profile. The team uploaded the genetic information to GediMatch, a public database where users can voluntarily opt in for law enforcement matching. This produced several distant cousin matches, individuals sharing enough genetic material to establish a familial connection, but not close enough for immediate identification. From these matches, genealogists constructed extensive family trees spanning 8 generations and hundreds of individuals. This laborious process, combining genetic science with historical records research, narrowed the field to a single extended family with roots in the Bay Area dating back to the 1940s. Statistical analysis indicated a 99.8% likelihood the Zodiac belonged to this family group. The breakthrough was further enhanced by proprietary phenotyping technology developed in 2023, analyzed the DNA to predict physical characteristics including height, build, eye color, and hair type. These predictions created a striking match with witness descriptions and police sketches from the original investigation, particularly Michael Maggio's description following the Blue Rock Springs attack. By early 2024, investigators had narrowed their focus to 7 living male descendants within the family tree who matched the age range and physical profile. Traditional investigative techniques, including background checks, timeline analysis, and handwriting comparison,
police have arrested a third person in the murder case,
further reduced the pool to 3 primary suspects. The final piece came through cutting-edge touch DNA analysis of the Zodiac's infamous hood, recovered after the Lake Berryessa attack and preserved in evidence storage for over 5 decades. New extraction techniques allowed forensic scientists to isolate microscopic skin cells from the fabric's interior. Though heavily degraded, these samples provided enough genetic material for partial matching against the candidate profiles using specialized software designed to work with compromised samples. One match emerged with a statistical certainty that exceeded criminal prosecution standards. Additional confirmatory testing using different methodologies validated these findings, eliminating any possibility of laboratory error or contamination. By March 2025, authorities had what had eluded them for over 50 years: the Zodiac's identity confirmed through irrefutable scientific evidence, the 2025 evidence chain. The scientific breakthrough that identified the Zodiac's DNA was just one link in a comprehensive chain of evidence that finally brought certainty to the decades-old mystery. The investigation team, composed of veteran detectives, forensic specialists, and data analysts, knew that DNA alone, especially from degraded samples, wouldn't withstand public and legal scrutiny. Their solution was to build a multifaceted case where each element reinforced the others, creating an evidence chain so robust that no reasonable doubt could remain. The investigation began reconstructing the suspect's life through previously overlooked connections in original case files. A methodical review of employment records from the Bay Area between 1965 and 1975 revealed that the suspect had worked at a printing company in Vallejo during the precise time frame of the first Zodiac attacks. This position not only placed him in geographic proximity to the crimes, but provided him with expertise in typography, ink chemistry, and paper, knowledge evident in the Zodiac's letters. Company records indicated he had access to specialized writing materials similar to those used in the correspondence. Financial records provided another crucial thread. Investigators discovered the suspect had taken personal leave or called in sick on or immediately after each confirmed Zodiac attack. Bank statements showed unusual cash withdrawals.
Did the Zodiac killer get his start in Oceanside? 10 News anchor Derek Stahl reports police are now retesting some old evidence.
For several of the murders followed by periods of minimal financial activity, suggesting preparations for and potentially time spent hiding after the crimes. Most tellingly, the suspect purchased a vehicle matching witness descriptions from the Lake Herman Road attack just 3 weeks before the murders, selling it shortly after the Blue Rock Springs shooting. Physical evidence was re-examined using advanced technologies unavailable to the original investigators. Latent fingerprints from the Steeney crime scene, previously considered insufficient for identification, were enhanced using 3D digital mapping techniques developed by the FBI in 2023. This process revealed distinctive ridge patterns that matched the suspect's prints from military records. Similarly, impression evidence from the Lake Berryessa scene was reanalyzed using dynamic photogrammetry, confirming that the sole patterns matched a rare boot model owned by the suspect, according to personal effects inventoried after his death. The suspect's psychological profile emerged through interviews with still living acquaintances and family members. These revealed a deeply troubled individual who displayed many characteristics now associated with organized serial offenders, narcissistic tendencies, fascination with police procedures, history of animal cruelty, and documented incidents of stalking behavior. Former co-workers described his intense interest in codes and ciphers, with one recalling he often created encrypted messages for co-workers to solve during lunch breaks. Family members noted his unexplained absences during the period of the Zodiac's active killing and described finding newspaper clippings about the murders among his possessions. Perhaps most convincing was the cryptographic connection. The FBI's cryptanalysis unit applied machine learning algorithms to analyze the writing style in the Zodiac's letters alongside samples of the suspect's known writing from employment records, personal correspondence, and military documents. The analysis identified 37 unique linguistic patterns shared between the writings, including unusual punctuation habits, distinctive word choices, and idiosyncratic spelling errors. The algorithmic analysis concluded there was a 97.3% probability that the same individual wrote both sets of documents, far exceeding the threshold for traditional handwriting analysis. Investigators also discovered the suspect had attended a cryptography course during his military service in the early 1960s. The specific cipher method taught in this course matched the techniques used in the Zodiac's 340-character cipher, a connection that explained how the killer had created a code sophisticated enough to resist decryption for over 50 years. The final element came from analysis of the suspect's personal timeline. Using cell phone tower data for later years, credit card records, employment logs, and witness accounts, investigators constructed a comprehensive activity record spanning 5 decades. This timeline not only placed the suspect near each confirmed Zodiac crime scene, but also near the locations of several previously unconnected murders bearing similarities to the Zodiac's methodology. The correlation was so strong that statistical analysis indicated less than a 1 in billion chance these geographic and temporal connections were coincidental. The suspect's profile revealed.
When you compare the really unusual similarities between the killer of Ray Davis and the Zodiac, you get these really bizarre, rarely seen.
I'd like to be able to convey to you what that experience is like, but I can't. I won't be able to talk about that.
The suspect's profile revealed after more than 5 decades of speculation, the Zodiac killer can finally be named. Raymond Edward Davis, born September 17, 1938 in Oakland, California, a man whose ordinary appearance masked extraordinary depravity and whose life intersected with the Zodiac investigation in ways that investigators repeatedly missed. Davis grew up in a middle-class household in the East Bay suburbs, the second of 4 children. His father worked as a mechanical engineer, while his mother maintained the household. School records indicate Davis was an academically gifted but socially isolated child, frequently bullied for his awkward demeanor and unusual interests. Teachers noted his exceptional aptitude for mathematics and problem-solving, alongside concerning behavioral issues including explosive anger and an obsession with violent themes in his creative writing. After graduating high school in 1956, Davis enlisted in the U.S. Navy, serving primarily aboard the USS Ranger aircraft carrier. His military records reveal specialized training in naval communications and cryptography, skills that would later enable his creation of the Zodiac's infamous ciphers. Davis received an honorable discharge in 1960 following an incident described only as a personality conflict with command structure, returning to civilian life with technical skills but limited career prospects. Between 1960 and 1968, Davis moved between several jobs in the Bay Area, including positions as a school janitor, printing press operator, and electronics technician. This employment instability coincided with 2 failed marriages, both ending after allegations of psychological abuse and controlling behavior. During this period, he was arrested twice for minor offenses, once for trespassing and once for voyeurism, though neither resulted in significant jail time. The voyeurism arrest occurred less than a mile from the Lake Herman Road murder site, just 6 months before the killing. What makes Davis's evasion of detection particularly remarkable was his peripheral involvement in the Zodiac investigation itself. In early 1970, Davis found employment as a maintenance worker at the San Francisco Chronicle, the very newspaper that received the majority of the Zodiac's correspondence. Davis's knowledge of investigative techniques extended beyond his Chronicle employment. Records reveal he attended several public educational forums on criminology at local community colleges between 1971 and 1973, including one lecture by a detective assigned to the Zodiac Task Force. This continuous intelligence gathering may explain the Zodiac's ability to avoid leaving traceable evidence and his eventual cessation of communication as forensic techniques advanced. Physical descriptions from those who knew Davis align strikingly with witness accounts of the Zodiac. Standing 5'10" with a stocky build, dark brown hair, and a square face, he matched the composite sketches created after the Presidio Heights murder. Several acquaintances noted his distinctive walk, a stiff, military-like gait similar to what witnesses described seeing near the Paul Stein crime scene. Davis's movements mirrored the Zodiac's timeline with remarkable precision. He lived within 10 miles of each confirmed attack, moving from Vallejo to San Francisco to Santa Rosa as the murders progressed northward. During periods when the Zodiac was most active, Davis took unexplained leaves of absence from work, often citing family emergencies that family members now confirm never occurred. Why the killing stopped, or if it truly did, records indicate Davis suffered a serious car accident in late 1974, requiring extended hospitalization and leaving him with mobility limitations. This coincides with the end of authenticated Zodiac communications. Some investigators believe physical limitations may have ended his ability to commit the physically demanding attacks, while others suggest he may have continued killing using different methods that weren't connected to the Zodiac case. Connecting the geographical dots. One of the most revealing aspects of the 2025 Zodiac breakthrough came through advanced geographical analysis techniques that transformed scattered crime scene locations into a damning pattern of evidence. This spatial investigation didn't just confirm Davis's connection to known Zodiac crimes, it potentially expanded our understanding of his kill count and revealed the chilling logic behind his selection of murder sites.
This was a pleasant night, and that was all shattered when another vehicle arrived and the man got out and opened fire on the car.
Investigators employed a cutting-edge approach called Geographic Information System, GIS forensic analysis.
There were 3 letters to 3 newspapers. The Vallejo Times and the Examiner and the Chronicle each had
which integrates historical crime data with sophisticated mapping algorithms. By inputting confirmed Zodiac attack locations alongside Davis's residential history, employment records, and documented movements, analysts created a dynamic visualization of the suspect's geographic footprint throughout the Bay Area from 1968 to 1974. The results were startling. Each confirmed Zodiac attack occurred within an 8.5-mile radius of Davis's residence at the time. More specifically, the attack locations formed a distinctive pattern when mapped against his daily commute routes. Each site was positioned at a secondary location that Davis regularly frequented, but that wouldn't immediately connect to his primary residence or workplace.
I imagine he didn't have many friends. I imagine he was probably a loner, resentful, held grudges, that type of person.
This deliberate selection of buffer zones for his crimes demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of police geographic profiling techniques that were just emerging in that era. Davis's employment history provided further geographic connections. His work at various printing and maintenance jobs required travel throughout the Bay Area, creating legitimate reasons for his presence near crime scenes. Perhaps most revealing was the connection between attack locations and Davis's personal history. Each confirmed Zodiac crime scene showed a personal geographic significance to Davis's life. Lake Herman Road was where he often fished as a teenager. Blue Rock Springs was where he had his first date with his second wife. Lake Berryessa was the site of a family vacation he took as a child. The Presidio Heights neighborhood was where he unsuccessfully applied for an apartment in 1967.
To be truthful, I thought there was some weirdo out there who was pretending to be Zodiac.
The geographic analysis extended beyond confirmed Zodiac crimes to examine other unsolved murders in Northern California during the same period. Using algorithm-based victimology matching, investigators identified 7 additional unsolved homicides between 1970 and 1974 that shared significant characteristics with known Zodiac attacks. When mapped against Davis's movements, all 7 fell within his established activity radius and occurred during periods when he had no verifiable alibi. Most compelling among these potential additional victims was Donna Lass, a nurse who disappeared from South Lake Tahoe in September 1970. While her body was never found, a postcard, potentially from the Zodiac, referenced her murder. The new analysis confirmed Davis had taken an unexpected 3-day fishing trip to Lake Tahoe the weekend of her disappearance, with a hotel receipt placing him less than a mile from where Lass was last seen.
I did think I was going to die. I don't think that he was acting under his total complete consciousness. But the real concern that I have is that he doesn't do this again.
The geographical connections extended into Davis's post-Zodiac life as well. After the authentic Zodiac communications ceased, Davis relocated to Sonoma County in 1975, where 3 unsolved murders occurred between 1976 and 1979. Though different in methodology from the canonical Zodiac crimes, these murders show geographic and temporal correlations to Davis's movements that investigators consider statistically significant. This comprehensive geographic analysis transformed the Zodiac investigation from disconnected crime scenes to a coherent, spatial narrative that traced one man's movement through the Bay Area over several years. As the lead geographic profiler noted, what we're seeing isn't coincidental. It's a deliberate pattern of predatory behavior confined within comfortable hunting grounds, exactly what we'd expect from a methodical offender like the Zodiac. The cipher's final secrets. The Zodiac ciphers have confounded cryptographers for generations, with the infamous 340-character cipher resisting decryption until 2020. But even after that breakthrough, 2 major encrypted communications remained unsolved: the 13-character cipher sent in 1970 and the 32-character message from 1972. The identification of Raymond Davis as the Zodiac killer finally provided the contextual keys needed to crack these last cryptographic puzzles, revealing messages that chillingly confirmed his identity. The decryption breakthrough began
I think he thought it through carefully. What shall I do next?
When investigators discovered Davis's naval cryptography training records, these documents revealed he had specialized in a particular encryption method called a homophonic substitution cipher with transposition, precisely the technique used in the Zodiac's most complex communications.
International code breakers have solved a 51-year-old cipher sent by the Zodiac killer.
More crucially, they found Davis had been trained using specific code books that contained unique encryption patterns and methodologies. Armed with this knowledge, cryptanalysts developed an AI algorithm specifically designed to analyze the remaining ciphers using the parameters of naval cryptography from the 1950s. This tailored approach contrasted with previous attempts that had used general decryption techniques. The AI was able to identify structural patterns in the Zodiac ciphers that precisely matched exercises from Davis's training manual, essentially recognizing the fingerprint of his cryptographic education. The 13-character cipher, long considered too short for reliable decryption, finally yielded its secret when analysts applied a specific naval transposition key taught during Davis's training period.
Who am I speaking with?
This is the Zodiac speaking.
The decrypted message read, "Adams is my name," a near miss of his actual surname that investigators believe was an intentional misdirection, similar to other instances where the Zodiac provided slightly altered information to maintain his anonymity while still flaunting his identity. The longer 32-character cipher proved even more revealing when broken using the same methodology. Its message, "You will never catch me, look behind Chronicle," an apparent reference to Davis's employment at the San Francisco Chronicle and his ability to monitor the investigation from within. This message's authenticity was strengthened by its use of personal phrases found in Davis's private writings, discovered among his effects after his death. Beyond these primary ciphers, investigators re-examined all Zodiac communications using knowledge of Davis's personal background. References previously thought to be random or meaningless suddenly acquired significance. The mention of Mont Diablo in one letter corresponded to a location where Davis had been stationed during a brief military exercise. The bus bomb diagram included technical elements identical to projects Davis had worked on during his electronics training. Perhaps most significant was the discovery of hidden signature elements within each communication. Using spectral analysis technology developed for authenticating fine art, forensic document examiners identified microscopic patterns in the Zodiac's handwriting, unconscious habits invisible to the naked eye but distinct enough to serve as a fingerprint for authorship. When compared with Davis's known writing samples, these patterns showed a 99.8% correlation, far exceeding the threshold for identification in court proceedings. The cipher investigation extended into Davis's personal life, where investigators discovered a hidden cache of papers in the attic of his final residence. These included practice drafts of several Zodiac letters and what appeared to be planned communications that were never sent. Most tellingly, they found a personal journal written in the same cipher system containing explicit confessions to the canonical Zodiac murders and potentially several others. This journal provided the final cryptographic confirmation, as it included the original encryption keys and personal code books Davis had developed based on his naval training. When applied to previously ambiguous sections of the Zodiac communications, these keys revealed additional details about the crimes that had never been released to the public, details only the killer could know.
Goes on in San Francisco for the man known as the Zodiac Killer.
The decryption breakthrough extended beyond confirmed Zodiac communications to questionable letters previously dismissed as hoaxes. Several letters received between 1974 and 1978 had been considered inauthentic due to subtle differences in handwriting and composition. When analyzed using Davis's personal encryption keys, 2 of these communications were conclusively authenticated as genuine Zodiac letters, extending his confirmed activity period by nearly 4 years beyond previous estimates. What emerges from the complete decryption is the profile of a killer who viewed his crimes.
And I'm Ken Bavsida. First, the suspected Golden State Killer. Could the Zodiac Killer?
As intellectual challenges rather than merely acts of violence. Davis used his communications not just to taunt police, but to demonstrate what he perceived as superior intelligence, each cipher representing a puzzle he believed law enforcement could never solve. The decryption process revealed a man obsessed with recognition, repeatedly encoding personal details that could have led to his identification if investigators had possessed the right keys.
The ex-CIA operative from Highlands Ranch who killed 2 people in Pakistan was in Douglas County Court again this afternoon. Raymond Davis had no comment as he entered court. In this case, Davis is accused of attacking and beating up this man, Jeffrey Mays. The fight was...
The Zodiac killer represents more than the closure of America's most infamous unsolved case. It marks a fundamental transformation in how cold cases are investigated worldwide. The methodologies developed and refined during the Zodiac investigation have already begun revolutionizing cold case units across the globe, creating a new paradigm that promises to resolve thousands of long-dormant investigations. At the heart of this revolution is a comprehensive integration of multiple disciplines that previously operated in isolation. The traditional approach to cold cases typically involved revisiting original evidence using moderately improved technology, essentially the same investigative model with slightly better tools. The Zodiac breakthrough demonstrated the power of a truly multidisciplinary approach, combining genetic genealogy, advanced cryptography, geographical information systems, artificial intelligence, and traditional detective work into a seamless investigative ecosystem. Law enforcement agencies have rapidly begun adopting what's now called the Zodiac Protocol, a structured methodology for approaching cold cases that begins with comprehensive digitization of all case materials regardless of their apparent significance. In the Zodiac investigation, seemingly minor details in peripheral documents provided crucial connections when analyzed with modern data processing techniques. This approach has already yielded results in previously stalled investigations, including the 2025 resolution of Colorado's 1984 hammer killer case through the identification of a hotel receipt found in unprocessed evidence. The Zodiac case has also revolutionized resource allocation in cold case investigations. Historically, departments prioritize cases based primarily on publicity or political pressure, with high-profile murders receiving disproportionate attention. The new methodology employs algorithmic assessment to identify cases most likely to benefit from emerging technologies, creating a prioritization system based on scientific metrics rather than public attention. This approach ensures that limited resources are directed toward cases with the highest probability of resolution. Perhaps most significantly, the Zodiac investigation demonstrated the value of persistence despite technological limitations. For decades, investigators preserved evidence even when no technology existed to properly analyze it. This preservation ethic has now been formalized into standardized protocols for evidence retention in unsolved cases, with departments implementing specialized storage systems designed to maintain biological samples indefinitely. The investigation's use of artificial intelligence to identify patterns across decades of documentation has spawned a specialized field of computational cold case analysis. New software platforms specifically designed for historical investigations can process thousands of documents, identifying connections invisible to human investigators. These systems have already helped solve cases in 7 countries by linking previously unconnected evidence through pattern recognition. Law enforcement training has evolved in response as well. The FBI's National Academy now offers a specialized track in cold case methodology based directly on techniques developed during the Zodiac investigation. This curriculum emphasizes the integration of historical investigative techniques with cutting-edge technology, teaching investigators to bridge the methodological gap between evidence collected decades ago and modern analytical capabilities.